Revelation 6, 12, where we're going to be starting at. Quickly, this is taking place at the end of the third of the first part of the 7-year tribulation. When he opens the sixth seal, that begins the latter part of the 3.5 years. Some people say that it starts actually with the fifth seal, but either way, I'm not going to be here, so, but it starts, we're going to go ahead and just kind of ballpark it, we are now at the end of the 3.5 years. Now, everything is going to kind of run really, really quickly now for the rest of Revelation. It's not our study, but as far as everything happening, it's going to run extremely quickly. There's a globe out there. You ever seen it? Please. What you got to understand, what we're dealing with now in Revelation, is this is global, okay? And then it also is going to be not only global and universal, but it is going to affect space. It's going to affect the Milky Way. It's going to affect planets. It's going to affect stars. Now, up until now, everything that has happened has been given by the order of God, but it has been carried out by man. Right? Man has been the responsible one, basically, for carrying these out. God has given them the authority to do that. Has given them the authority to do that. So, but now God is going to take control. Now, I know back during the 60s and 70s it got really big. I don't know if it's really as big now about the earth movement. You know, tree huggers, spotted owl kissers, those kinds of folks. They're always wanting to try to save the earth, and you know, we do need to, you know, try to save it. But what man has done is not going to be anything compared to what God's going to do to the earth. He holds the title deed to this earth. He's going to do what he wants to. And beginning in verse 12, you are not dealing with fear, you are dealing with sheer panic from now on from the people that are left here. Now there is a big difference in being afraid and panic. I was looking up some phobias today, and the common phobias are fear of snakes, fear of being kidnapped, fear of loss of identity. But there was one phobia, fear of what? What? Thought you said mites. Whatever. I know she's afraid of spiders because last night we watched TV and she jumped from here to there in one swoop and stomped on a spider. Man, I've never seen her move that quick. So we know she's afraid of spiders. There is a phobia, I can't remember what it is now, but it is a fear of a flushing toilet. I swear, it's on the New England Journal of Medicine's website. So everybody is afraid of something. All right? People that says I'm not afraid of anything, you're a liar. Okay? People are afraid of something. But there is a difference between being afraid and sheer panic. Now, what you're dealing with in verse 12, verse 12 through verse 17, you are dealing with, basically, it's going to be the world's largest prayer meeting. All right? But it's not going to be a prayer for salvation. It is going to be a prayer of suicide. Death is going to evade mankind before long, and people are going to try to end their lives, but death is not going to be around to assist that. That is going to be later on in the book of Revelations. They don't pray to God. They're going to pray to the mountains. They're going to pray to the caves. They're going to pray to anything that can take them out of their misery. And that is what you are dealing with now. So this is going to run. Let me go back. Now, I've got several Bible verses I'm going to give you. I'll look them up. You don't have to. I don't want you guys to get lost. But in Matthew, let me go to Matthew 24. Basically, Matthew is going to be your fallback book or your fallback chapter when you're dealing with Revelations. But Matthew chapter 24, verse 8 through 11. What you're dealing with now in Matthew chapter 24 verse 8 is going to begin in Revelations chapter 6 verse 12. So Matthew chapter 24 verse 8 and Matthew chapter 6 verse 12 are going to run parallel. They are basically the same. Okay? In Matthew chapter 24 verse 8 it says, all of these are the beginning of sorrows. Okay? So when you're dealing with the beginning of sorrows, you're actually starting in Revelation chapter 6, verse 12. And then he goes on to say, then they shall deliver you up to be afflicted and to kill you, and you shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, they shall betray one another, and shall hate one another, and many false prophets shall rise, deceiving many. And because of iniquity abound, the love of many shall wax cold. That is your last days. That is what you're dealing with now when you get to Revelation chapter 6, verse 12. So Revelation chapter 6, verse 12 runs a gamut with Matthew chapter 24, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. All right? Now, what it starts off discussing, this is going to be the day of the Lord, is what it's going to be described as. Now, another thing you have to remember, the day of the Lord is actually in two phases. The day of the Lord is actually going to be the last part of the tribulation and then the last part of the millennial reign. Because the day of the Lord basically means He is going to take over. He is going to, He's going to show His almighty power, and He's going to do that during the last part of the 3.5 years, and then He is going to do that during the last part of the millennial. And I'll read that quickly to you. In Revelation chapter 20, I'm not going to get deep into this because I don't want to cover anything we're going to be covering in the next few weeks. In Revelation chapter 20, verse 7, and it says, and when the 1,000 years had expired, that is after the millennial kingdom, Satan is going to be loosed out of his prison. And he's going to go to deceive nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, and gather them together for a battle, the number of whom is the sand of the sea. And it says, and I saw a great white throne in verse 11, and it says, and him that sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heavens fled away, and there was no place for them. And then I saw the great and small, and the books are going to be opened, they're going to be judged, hell and death is going to be delivered up, they're going to be cast into the lake of fire, and whosoever name is not written in the Lamb's book of life is going to be cast into the lake of fire. So that is your second phase of what we're talking about. Now, when you're talking about the day of the Lord, there are several verses that can correspond with this. But I want you to look. You remember in Matthew chapter 24, I'll look at it. You don't have to. I know I'm going quick, but we just got a lot to kind of get through tonight. Matthew chapter 24, the attitude of the people during this time is going to be described in Matthew chapter 24, verse 37 and 39. And this is what it says. This is the attitude of the people. But as the days of Noah were, so shall the Son of Man be. For as in the days they were before the flood, they were eating, drinking, marrying, giving in marriage, until the day of Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came, took them away, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. In the Greek, that is called the day of the Lord, but in the Septuagint, they call it the Son of Man. In the Old Testament, in Hebrew, it's going to be called the day of the Lord. So, during this last 3.5 years, the gospel is going to be preached. The 144,000 are going to go out and preach the gospel. And if you remember in Revelation chapter 7, untold millions are going to be saved because of being martyred. Still, people do not agree with that, and that's perfectly fine. But that is going to take place at the day of Noah. Right before the flood came, there was no concern. They seen this guy building this ark. Probably made fun of him, didn't question him. He's just a goofy individual. Leave him alone. He's been doing it for 120 years. He's not going to quit now. He'll quit one day. Then it starts to rain, and then they believe. Because the reason they believe is because they all rushed toward the ark. Now, just like in the last 3.5 years of the tribulation, the gospel's going to be preached. People's going to go ignore those idiots. They don't know what they're talking about. And then all of a sudden, the day of the Lord is going to come. And He's going to wipe out everything that stands against Him. All right? And it is also seen in 1 Thessalonians 5:3. 1 Thessalonians 5:3. Let me see if I can find that really quick. 1 Thessalonians 5:3. It says, for when they shall say peace and safety, then a sudden destruction shall come upon them, as travail of a woman with child, and they shall not escape. So that is describing, people are going to say, listen, everything's fine. We're living in this utopia. Everything's great. Don't worry about these people going around talking about Jesus. He's dead. He's been buried. And then all of a sudden, everything is going to happen. And this is how it is going to be starting to be described, starting in Revelation chapter 6, verse 12. Now, other verses that correspond with Revelation chapter 6, verse 12, and Matthew. And these are just a smidgen of the verses. There are just line after line after line of verses that you can kind of go to. But in Matthew chapter 24, verse 29, it says that immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars, that is actually the word Astrodeus, which we get our word asteroid from, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. Remember that verse in verse 29, because that is exactly what is going to happen in Revelation chapter 6, verse 12 through 17. All right? Now, another verse is in Zechariah. Let me look in Zechariah. This takes, I forgot how much time this took up studying all this until I started studying it again. And it shall come, this is in Zechariah 14:6, and it says, y'all can just write that down, Zechariah 14:6 and 7. And it shall come to pass in that day that the light shall not be clear nor dark, but it shall be one day which shall be known to the Lord, not day nor night, but it shall come to pass that evening time it shall be light. Another word to describe the day of the Lord. It's also found in Isaiah, and it is also going to be found, let me look in Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 29 also describes this day. It is described a lot more in the Old Testament than in the New Testament. In Isaiah chapter 29 verse 6, it says, Thou shalt be visited, this is 29:6, Isaiah, Thou shalt be visited of the Lord of hosts with thunder and with earthquake and with great noise, with storm and with tempest and with flame of devouring fire. That is another time that it is described. Again in Isaiah chapter 13, verse 9 through 13. This is how the writer describes the day of the Lord that we're going to maybe get into tonight. Behold, the day of the Lord. As mentioned, the day of the Lord is going to be found roughly about 20 times in the Old Testament, maybe 6 or 7 in the New Testament. The day of the Lord cometh, cruel both with wrath and fierce anger. Totally opposite of how he came the first time. To lay the land desolate, that is talking about the entire globe. He shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it. And the reason he's got to destroy the sinners is because he's got to rid the world of sin to bring in the new heaven and the new earth. For the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. Okay? Complete darkness. The sun shall be darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. So it is complete darkness when this takes place. Okay? There's no light anywhere. So you have to keep that. You can circle that. That's really the biggie in Isaiah chapter 13. No stars that give off light, and they give off very little light. There's no sun to give off light. There's no moon to give off light. It is going to be total darkness. Okay? Complete darkness. And that is just a handful of verses. Now, the seal is going to be broke on the sixth seal in Revelation chapter 6, verse 12. This is what is going to happen. All right? There's absolutely no light. Revelation 6, Matthew 24 is going to run parallel with each other. Keep that in mind. Okay? And this is what it says. And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal. We do not know the time that happens in that white section between 11 and 12. But there is an amount of time that's going to take place. Weeks, months, we don't know. But there is a time. So if we are in agreement that between verse 11 and verse 12, that is the beginning of verse 12 is going to be the beginning of the last part of the 3.5 years. It says, And I beheld, and he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake. All right, just one. There is going to be a great earthquake. And in the Greek, that means a shaking. Okay? And it does not mean a shaking of earth. It means a shaking of the universe. Earth and up in the heavens. Okay? We was talking a couple of weeks ago. You guys remember when that earthquake came through? What year? What was that? 2000? 03? I remember hearing it, and it wasn't, I don't remember what it registered. I have no idea. But I just remember feeling it and just hearing it off in the distance rumble off like a train. And it just kind of shook, and that was it. Now, you're dealing with a great earthquake, all right? This is a great also means megos, a mega earthquake. This is going to affect everything, all right? And the reason I want to bring this down, you are not dealing with stuff that is taking place in our little sector of the world, Alabama. This is going to affect all of this, every bit of it, okay? And everything that is atop and everything that's below. That is what's going to affect this, okay? Now, we're concerned with everything that's happening on Sand Mountain. This is going to be worldwide. Everything that is going to take place is going to be worldwide, okay? There is a great earthquake, and because of this great earthquake, all right, complete darkness. Now, we noticed that back when we looked at Isaiah chapter 13. There's no stars, there's no moon, and there's no sun. If the moon was to go out, our closest star, if all the moon went out and all the stars, the only planet that would probably give off any type of light would probably be Venus. That would be very small light. So if you have no moon, then it says, and there was a great earthquake, and first of all, the sun become black as sackcloth. All right? So when all of this rumbling happens, the first thing that is going to happen is that the moon is going to become like sackcloth. Now, when this happens, there are plates all under this, okay? When all of this starts to happen, it is going to not only produce, everything's going to fall to pieces, and we'll try to get into that, but it is going to cause eruptions, volcano eruptions. And I don't know if you've ever seen them on the internet, but do you know when a volcano erupts, all that ash and everything goes up into the atmosphere and it blocks out the sun? They said that one of the eruptions that they had several years ago, it said that when the earthquake happened, all the street lights and stuff come on because the sun went out. They said it looked like God had taken his finger and clicked off the sun. Now, just interesting to me, if we were to lose the sun, just the sun, all right, in 1 year's time, the Earth's temperature would drop to 100 below zero in 1 year's time, all right? You still have another 3.5 years to deal with this stuff, okay? We do not understand how much we rely on that. It's total darkness. Now, when this earthquake happens, what is the first thing that it's going to, if there's any buildings, when this happens, buildings are going to fall, right? Worldwide, it's going to be much more than Cherokee Electric, Sand Mountain, or Marshall DeKalb can handle. This is going to be worldwide. What is going to happen? What's going to go off? The power. Then what else is going to happen? We're not going to have any water, are we? We're not going to have any power. We go without power when the tornado comes through. How long are we out? 3 days? I like to pull my teeth out. When that power came back on, I done a happy dance around the house. All right, you have absolutely no power. Nowhere. You got an earthquake that's happened. There's no power. No hospitals. They're destroyed. No medical centers. They're destroyed. You have absolutely the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, Marines. They're useless because guess what they run on? Power. You have this ginormous earthquake that affects everything. Your job, your house, your livelihood, the banks. Let's go without gasoline for our vehicles. No gas. There is. Think about the nuclear plants that are around our world. I mean, we were always scared we're going to have another Chernobyl, aren't we? Now, those things start going off. It is going to affect everything. It is going to be total chaos. There's not going to be any television. There's not going to be any iPhones. There's not going to be any internet. We are going to go back, or they are going to go back to the dark ages, like living like cavemen. And I'll prove that in the next few minutes. That is what's going to happen when this earthquake takes place. Now, remember back in Matthew chapter 24, he says this is only the beginning. And that is only the sixth seal that's broken. You've not gotten into the trumpets, and you have not gotten into the bowls that's going to be poured out. So this is the beginning of the end. And people will say, well, it can't get any worse. Yes, it can. Now, and I got on some websites today and got some information. All right? Darkness affects everything. It affects plants. It affects animal migration. It affects us as humans. It affects absolutely everything. Darkness, complete darkness. Okay? Everything is going to change. The ocean tides are going to change. The Earth axis is going to change because of the ocean's tides. Then the Earth is going to tilt on its axis. If the Earth tilts 3 degrees, that's not much. If you see how it's tilted now, let's just say it tilts just barely. This is what's going to happen. All right, you're all of a sudden going to have wind up to speeds of 1,000 miles per hour. We had some wind last night, turned our trampoline over, and we thought it was rough. This is just the beginning, guys. All right, anything that is not anchored. This is coming from people from MIT, a group of MIT Christians from MIT, done basically a study on what would happen if when this happens to the Earth. And I can't give you everything, but they said anything that is not going to be anchored into solid bedrock is going to be torn away instantly. Houses, everything. The polar ice caps are going to begin to melt. Everything is going to totally change. Mankind is going to live like cavemen, they said. The life that we know, or the life that is going to happen, is all of a sudden going to disappear, and they said in a matter of 30 seconds. There's no rescue squads. There's no medical attention. There's absolutely nothing. People are going to be in sheer panic. They're going to know then what it is like to be not afraid, but they are going to know what it's like to be absolutely petrified. And this is only the beginning. And what I want to clear this up, when you're studying this should not scare us. Because guess what? We're not going to be here. Unless you believe, if you're mid-trib, you think we're going to go through the first part, okay. We're not going to be here. But I've got family. I guarantee, raise your hand if you got somebody that you know if they're not saved, they're going to be here. Everybody in here does, don't we? We've all got people that are going to be affected by this. And the thing about it is they are not going to repent. It tells us over in a few more chapters that they don't repent. They actually get mad at God. Now, and then it also says that the moon is going to become as blood. So you have no moon and you have no sun. Everything is in complete darkness. If you are found with a flashlight, you're probably going to get your throat cut. If you're found with any candles, they're going to kill you. If you're found with any type of lighter, they're probably going to kill you. People are going to be like madmen. Okay? It's going to be every man for himself. Your next door neighbor that you used to give vegetables to in the garden, and y'all can get out and swap stories across the road, you're going to be mortal enemies now. I'm going to get what you have, and you're going to try to get what I have. It is going to be a total disaster, but Jesus Christ says it's only the beginning. Okay? Now, let's take it a step further. And the stars fell. Now, that word stars is not what we look at. It is the word we get asteroid from. Because there is one star, the smallest star we have, is nearly 100 times bigger than our sun. And they said if that star would fall to the earth, we would burn up before we got within 100,000 miles of us. So this can't be a star. So when I looked it up in the Greek, it means asteroid. All right? And it says, where am I at? And it says, and the stars, plural, fell unto the earth. Now, this is plural, okay? This is more than one. Okay? I remember when I was in high school back in 1990, I think it was 1990, an asteroid the size of the Empire State Building came within 700,000 miles of Earth. I remember reading it in Time magazine. 700,000 miles, the size of Empire State Building. And the astronomers and all the nerds and eggheads said, we didn't see it, it just appeared. On the telescope, they said we was looking, and then all of a sudden, this thing is coming. And they kept it real quiet until it passed out of our act, until it passed. And then they started talking. There are things out there that's circling around us that we have no idea. I done some more study, all right? On an asteroid, just one. Not plural, but just one, okay? This is what one can do. Now, 71% of this is ocean. So if anything's going to fall from the sky, it is going to basically be in the water, right? So you got, more than likely it's going to fall in the water. If 71 to 75% of our earth is oceans. All right. If one was to fall, and they done this on, since MIT, I think it's up in Massachusetts, so they done it for the East Coast, and everything they did was basically on the East Coast, but they actually done one for the Gulf of Mexico, which is really interesting. I'll tell you about this. They said if one asteroid, 3 miles across, it's not far, 3 miles from my house to the stop sign is 3 miles. We don't think that's a big asteroid. But an asteroid, 3 miles across, if it falls 20 miles outside the coastline, traveling at 20,000 miles per hour, they said that it would be like a 250 megatons of dynamite going off. It would be an equal of 50 Hiroshima bombs. When it hits the water, it would affect climate, and the worst thing, the water vapor would be sucked up into the atmosphere, which is the greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect would be ramped up 100 times. The polar ice caps would melt, the sea level would rise, mega UV rays would start to cause. Skin cancer would be at a 1,000% rate because of one asteroid. But John tells us I saw a bunch of them. You notice he doesn't give us a number. Jews was always obsessed with giving you an exact number, but he does not even give us a number how many's fallen. All right? Now, if one hit the Atlantic, right here, the Atlantic Ocean, 3 miles wide, everything from Long Island, which is right in here, all the way up to the Appalachians of Carolina would be destroyed. Would be totally underwater if one hit 3 miles across. And the guys at MIT said these are the smallest ones they could find up in space. Okay? Now, it would travel, the water would travel 1,500 miles inland, at least up to Toronto. The impact would kill, but the water would travel 1,500 miles to Toronto, Canada, if it hits the East Coast. 20 miles out, and that's just one. Man is not doing this. This is God doing this, okay? The wave traveling would be the exact speed of an F-14 jet fighter. You know, I think they can go to speed of sound. Could you imagine? And that's one. These things are going to be falling everywhere. Okay, you're dealing with the polar ice caps. You're dealing with the greenhouse effect. You're dealing with UV rays. People, if you're lucky enough to survive the impact, you're going to die from the waves. Okay? Guess where Alabama's at? Right there. We're right in the middle of the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico. Oh, I got one on the Gulf of Mexico. If one hits the Gulf of Mexico, 3 miles across, and lands. Now, the Gulf of Mexico is 990 miles east to west, and it's 560 miles north to south. If it lands smack dab right in the middle of one of my favorite places, all right, 3 miles across, just one, it would have an impact. Waves crashing onto Dothan, Panama City, Gulf Shores, 1,500-foot high waves that would flood all the way into Kansas City, Missouri. Now, you've got to follow here. That's why Jesus Christ says those days have got to be shortened, because if I don't shorten those days, nobody's going to survive. So now you're dealing with no power, no hospitals, no nothing, no food. Could you imagine, we go to Costco, and every time I go into Costco, I think about this. When I go into Costco, they've got water stacked to the ceiling. They've got foods. They've just got everything. Places like Costco, Sam's, Walmart, Foodlands, it's going to be crazy. It is. I mean, I drank some water last night. I had that much left in the bottle, threw it away. I mean, and that's only one, guys. And John says, I've seen them falling, and I've seen them falling, and I've seen them falling, and I've seen them falling. This is another one. This is a survey they did. They said that if one would hit the earth, now we dealt with one hitting the water. Let's say it hits earth, and they do it in New York City. They said one traveling at 20,000 miles per hour, 3 miles across, would be a 12 megaton of force hitting. In an instant, 70,000 people would die within a 25 miles per radius if one fell. It will flatten buildings at least 12 miles away, just the impact. Just the impact. If it lands directly in the middle of a city, in the middle of New York City, 1 million people will die instantly. This is God doing this, not man. This is God. And what is sad, it is just the beginning of all this happening. Right now, the only thing that has happened is there's an earthquake, there's sackcloth, and the moon, and the sun, and the stars, asteroids are falling. This is how he describes it. Now, guys, I'm not telling you this. Please, I'm not telling you this to scare you. Okay? He says, and the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as the fig tree casteth her untimely figs. You ever been under, we don't have a fig tree, but you ever been under a pecan tree or something, or an apple tree, and kick the base of it, what happens? A few hundred just, he said, this is what it's going to be like. All right? Now, your money, your personality, your charm, your wit, your position in life, it's not going to matter. When all this happens for the people that are sitting here and this is happening, they are going to remember there was a preacher one time who stood behind a pulpit and told me this is going to happen. And it says, and this is another one, in verse 14, this is just the beginning, okay? And it says, and the heaven departed as a scroll when it was rolled up together. This is how he describes it. In the Greek, it means you unrolled it, okay? And then it is stretched out so much that it splits down the middle, and then those two ends roll up. He said, with the asteroids coming, there's no sun, there's no moon. Now remember, this is pitch black. You don't know if these things are coming or not. You're running around like blind. He says, I looked up in the heavens, and all of a sudden, everything that is happening, he said, the sky was like somebody has taken a scroll, opened it up, and then split it down the middle, and then it rolls back up again. Okay? Now, and then it goes on. And when the heavens departed as a scroll, and it rolled up together, every mountain, Sand Mountain, Everest, what's that one out in Washington? Lanier. All of those mountains, every one of those mountains and every island were moved out of their places. It's scary, isn't it? People buy these islands and things. We watch Island Hunters sometimes. People that buy those things got more money than sense. And they always want to buy them islands to get away from the population and kind of get out by themselves. They're going to be gone. Okay? And keep reminding yourself that this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning, okay, of everything that's happening. Now, there are some verses that I want to go over that are going to be described this in even more detail. You write them down. I'll go over them. In Isaiah 2:12. Let me find it really quick. Isaiah 2:12. You think when all this starts happening, people that stuck here on earth, the last thing on their mind is going to be worried about income tax, Facebook, Twitter, stuff like that. Look in Isaiah 2:12, or write it down if you don't mind. It says, for the day of the Lord, there it is again, of hosts, shall be upon every one that is proud and lofty, and upon every one that is lifted up. That means people that are kings, queens, and he shall be brought low. In Jeremiah, the Old Testament is full of these verses. In Jeremiah 46:10. Jeremiah 46:10, this is what it says. For this is the day of the Lord, God of hosts, a day of vengeance, that he may avenge him of his adversaries. And the sword shall devour and it shall saturate, and it shall be made drunk with blood. Another verse. Let's go to Joel. Joel 1:15. Write them down. Don't look them up. Then you can go back home and kind of look them up if you want to. Joel 1:15. This is what it says: For the day of the Lord, alas, for the day of the Lord is at hand, and the destruction from the Almighty shall it come. Also in Amos 5:18. We're running out of time. Amos 5:18. Also in Obadiah. These are most of the time Old Testament prophets, the minor prophets, write about this. In Obadiah, there's only one chapter in Obadiah. Obadiah 15. This is what it says: For the day of the Lord is near. Upon all the heathen as thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. Thy reward shall return upon thee, upon thine head. So, when you're dealing with the day of the Lord, now something else is going to take place, all right? And the kings of the earth, finally, the kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the chief captains, and the mighty men, every bondman and every free man. That covers everybody. It goes from the kings to the slaves. That's everybody in between. That's low, middle, and high class folks, okay? Now people will say, if I'm stuck when this happens, I'm going to pray out to God that this happens. That He saves me out of this. Look what happens. Hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains. They resort back to Neanderthal cavemen. They got if you ever watch, you remember MTV Cribs? They'd always show their houses. They've went from the cribs, now they're living in caves, under rocks, they're living in the mountains. They've resorted back to living like cavemen. And this is what they said. You would think they would be praying to God, wouldn't you? This is who they prayed to. And they said to the mountains, not to God, okay, not to Jesus, not to the Holy Spirit. They prayed to the mountains and rocks. Now you see the suicide that comes in. Again, this is all over the place. Okay, this is affecting everybody. And when this is happening, asteroids are still falling, sun's still black, moon's still gone, everything's happening. You still got this. It takes. They said that if one hits the Atlantic and wipes out everything up into Toronto, it would take 1 year for the water to recede, and another year for you to see the very first grain of anything. Okay? Now, plus you got UV rays coming down, so you're dealing with that. It's not a pretty picture, is it? All right? Now, look, and it says, and they crowd to the rocks and to the mountains, and this is what they want: fall on us and hide us. Not from the asteroids, and not from the sun, and not from the moon. Hide us from the face of Him. Who are they wanting to hide from? God. That's who we should fear. Remember, I think it's in the book of Luke, God, Jesus Christ says, don't fear man, they can just take your body, fear me. They not only can take your body, but can cast your soul into hell. Hide us from the face of Him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb of God. You're not saved from your sins. You are saved from the wrath of God. That is what you're saved from. For the great day of His wrath is come. And this is how they're going to end it. Who shall be able to stand? There's no repentance. Everything's gone. Buildings are completely wiped out. There's no water, no electricity, there's no food. There's nothing. It's just like a barren landscape. There's absolutely nothing happening. And again, this is in two phases. You're looking at the first phase, and then the last phase is going to be at the end of the millennium. Look in 2 Peter. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Dealing with that second phase. See if I can find it. My Bible's, but I got where I can turn pages on this thing. I'm going to have to get it in. 2 Peter 3, 10 and 13. 10 through 10 and 13. Okay? This is how he writes it. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat, and the earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. What have we been discussing the last 45 minutes? This is happening. Now, if you go to verse 13, nevertheless, this is going to be, looking verse 12, looking for and hasting unto the coming of the day of the Lord, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved. That's what we just talked about. And the elements shall melt with fervent heat. That's what we've just been talking about. Now here's your second part, or your second phase, which is the end of the tribulation. Nevertheless, according to his promise, we look for what? A new heaven and a new earth. What happens after Jesus Christ throws hell, death, everybody into the lake of fire? It comes a new heaven and a new earth. Dear Heavenly Father, we love you and we thank you. Thank you, dear God, for this study and the ones that come out so faithfully, dear God. Dear God, help us not to be frightened about this, but dear God, help us to be concerned, dear God, for our lost loved ones. Dear God, we rejoice in the fact that you are going to come and you're going to rapture us out of here. Help us, dear God, to be able to keep our eyes on the skies, dear God, and our eyes on your book, dear God. Help us to be able to spread the gospel. For the prayer requests we've heard, we lift them up to you.